All right, so if you are counseling curious, but you haven't taken the plunge into your first session, or perhaps you are a brand new therapist and you are looking for some new ways to kind of explain and educate and support your clients, this might be just for you. My name's Chrissy, the emotional intelligence nurse, and I am here with my passion about biology and psychology. So behind me, you can see a picture of the brain. It is from the side, and you can see this red V, and that is just to give you an idea of three very sort of general areas of the brain that I want to share information with you. So if we think about this first part here, this part up in here, that's our prefrontal cortex, and that's all about what we call executive functioning. Just remember it as complex thinking, math, science kind of thinking, philosophy, being rational, being logical, all that kind of like meaty thinking. Now, if we look at this middle part in the middle of the V, we would often call that the mammalian or mammal brain, and that's all about love, connection, relationships, dopamine, serotonin. It is our limbic system. Jargon you don't need to remember. Just think about love, connection, relationships. Now, this back part of the brain, that is the very first part of the brain to develop when we are in utero. By embryology, this develops first, and our brain will develop from the bottom up or the bottom forward. That part of your brain does not care about complex thinking. It does not care about being rational. It does not care about philosophical thoughts. It cares about survival and homeostasis. Now, survival, think of your vital signs, your blood pressure, your heart rate, your breathing, your body temperature. That's pretty much what survival is. And homeostasis. Now, what that is it likes a certain range. Think about body temperature. Our body likes to be in a certain range. If you're above, we call it a fever. And if you're below, we call it hypothermia. Your body doesn't function optimally when you're below or above, right? You need to be in that range. So that back part of the brain is primitive. It's the first to develop, and it really just cares about keeping you alive. It doesn't care about keeping you happy. It doesn't care about your relationships or getting into school or your next job and promotion. It just cares about your physical aliveness. That's what it cares about. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the fear center or the amygdala. It is a part of our brain that's in the, here we go, the limbic system. Often we kind of equate it also to that primitive response. It is very instinctual. We are born with this instinct. We are likely not going to get rid of the amygdala. What it does is it constantly takes in sensory information from your environment. Sensory information is your five senses: sight, smell, taste, touch, hearing. It's always taking that information in. We are often even not aware of how much information the amygdala is taking in. That is why when you hear about trauma triggers, sometimes trauma triggers are so tricky to understand because there could be subconscious, unconscious, things we are not aware of, information that has come in, and we think, I'm not even sure what happened, but all of a sudden my heart is racing and I am having a trauma response. That's a bit of a tangent. So back to the amygdala. It takes in all this information and it's constantly making judgment calls for your safety and survival. That's it. So information's coming in and it's saying safe, 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 not safe. The not safe could be a facial expression that your amygdala has recognized or is similar enough to something your amygdala has recognized in the past that wasn't safe. It could be somebody cuts you off in traffic. It could be something as simple as you are walking up the stairs and you trip on a step, and that can trigger that sort of stress response. That stress response is protective. In the initial stages of a stress response, it is survival. Now, I'm going to get to something a little bit here about our initial stress response and how it can later turn into habitual functioning. But before we get to that, hang with me. When your body has a stress response, the amygdala has picked up on something, whether you are aware or not aware, it will do physical body things that are common across the board. Now, you in your own unique body may have a different sort of combination of these things, but what will almost always happen is there is tension, there is constriction into muscles, because when we have a stress response, you've maybe heard fight, flight, freeze, and another one that we talk about is fawn. But for any of those stress responses, we need tension in our muscles. We need the ability to act, whether it is the ability to hold really still, whether it is the ability to run away, or whether it is the ability to fight. So, muscle tension, your breathing is going to change. You are going to notice quicker breathing, more rapid breathing, or you are going to notice breath holding. Something that I say all the time to clients and they find so much relief in is when they come in and I'm explaining this and I say, if you have had a day where you're huffing, puffing, sighing, it's like you can't catch your breath, or you are yawning a ton all day, but you don't feel particularly physically tired, that is your indicator, my friend, that you are potentially running from your sympathetic nervous system. You are in a stress response state. You are likely holding tension, and your breathing is not within that homeostatic range. You are holding your breath or you're breathing really quick. Right? So that's the second thing that's always going to happen. Something else that will happen is your digestion and appetite is going to change. Now, everyone is a little bit different with this. Some people may notice that they do want to eat and drink more, but a lot of the times we will see people who that rest and that digest part of their day is out the window. They've lost their appetite. They may be nauseous. Some people will have diarrhea. Some people will swing the other way into constipation. All this to say that when we are triggered in a stress response, the amygdala has had some type of stimulus and a stress reaction. Our body is not concerned about having a steak dinner. It is concerned, again, about survival. That's all it cares about. So tension, breath holding, and digestion changes. Those are your three really big things that are going to happen when your amygdala picks up on a stressor and you react with a stress response: fight, flight, freeze. Now, this is not bad. Like I said, these are instinctual. We are born with them as instincts to help us for survival. If we did not have them, we would probably not have lived this long. And yeah, they're there for our help. Now, where they become unhelpful is we live in such a modern, fast-paced world. We have 24-hour access to pretty much everything. Our work emails, our phones, our social media, the economy, the social hierarchies, you name it. It's forever. I could list things that are stressors for us. There are things, again, that we are aware of, and there are things we are unaware of that our body is receiving through our five senses and our brain is making sense of. So if a stress response, amygdala picks up on something that is stressful, potentially threatening, or actually threatening to our survival, our living body, we have that stress response. It's a whole cascade of information and signals and hormones, think of cortisol in your body, that gets triggered. Now, what happens is when that stress response can't turn off, it is like a light switch gets left on. Your body stays more or less stuck in that stress response with all of those contractions, that tightening, the changes to your appetite, your digestion, your breathing, and it's going to impact this. Something I didn't mention earlier on is that when your stress response is triggered, these two systems go pretty much offline. Because again, if we were to balance out the risk of survival and my next coffee date with a friend, survival is going to trump that just by my biology alone. Something else that is going to happen is your behaviors and your thinking patterns will change. When you are triggered in a stress response, your mind is functioning very much from here, and everything is sort of a threat until that stress response can be turned off. So what I mean by this is often when people come to me and they have been habitually in a stress state, whether it's just chronic stress, whether it's big trauma, little trauma, it doesn't matter what it is, when their physical body is in that state and they come and they chat with me in counseling, what we really want to look at is the thinking and the behavior, what's happening there, because you will start to notice when you're in a stress state, you're more negative, you jump ahead and you fill in the blanks, things you predict, right? A lot of this is pulled from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT if you've heard it, right? That negative thinking, those automatic negative thoughts, right? That is also very, very common. So stress response, tension, digestion changes, breathing changes, negative thinking, negative outlook, you jump ahead and you fill in the blanks. Your mind is doing that not to cause you more stress and suffering, although it really often does. It is doing that because your mind, this primitive part, is desperately trying to seek safety. What is safety to that back part of the brain? Safety is what is familiar and what is predictable. Now, going back to what is instinctual in the moment versus what is habitual. In the moment, somebody cuts you off in traffic, your instinct is you tense, you tighten, you're looking if you have to pull over, you might yell out a word of choice, you will have a physiological response. And then after some time, maybe you pull over, you get your composure again, and you kind of regulate and you carry on in your day. Now, if you get cut off in traffic and you have that physiological response, and then you find yourself ruminating, your thoughts are just going around and around about that jerk who cut you off on the highway, you are going to be maintaining, in a way, that stress response. And then add in the rest of your day. You spill your coffee at work, a file goes missing, your voicemail is overloaded with crisis of, whatever your work entails. Those are stressors, and it's like another blip, 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 blip on your nervous system. So what is initially a stress response, tension, breath holding, negative thinking, can become habitual, and it becomes our day-to-day functioning. Now, this is really important, and the reason it is important is not just for our own awareness, but it is important because we can start to see our own red and yellow flags of when we're getting into a stress state and when we've been functioning for a very long time in that stress state. And let me tell you, I have not met one patient, one client, one counseling heart that I have connected with that is not utterly exhausted from this process. It's exhausting. Think about flexing your muscles for nonstop, right? Or holding your breath and then having to catch it. That is physical, energetic labor. It's tiring. So what we see happening is this habitual functioning becomes more or less our new sort of safety. It's familiar and it's predictable, but it's not actually safe. It's exhausting. It is depleting you. That brain fog, that not being able to focus, that can potentially be all explained by this. All the digestion issues that are not medically explained by something else, this. That is why it is so important, not just for our psychology, but to understand our biology and to really understand just the general context of biology, but then to really start applying it to your own personal physical being, because each of us is a little bit unique. So I offer you the generic information, sort of the baseline, and then you get to decide from there how your unique body reacts when there is a stress stimulus, and what is instinctive for you and what has become habitual. Now, one last thing before I wrap up here is our habitual functioning is the new safety. Remember, familiar and predictable. That's what this back part of our brain is like thriving on. It doesn't care. It wants familiar, predictable, and it wants survival. When that stress response is habitual functioning, we're negative, we're tense, all that stuff I've already listed, it feels threatening to change that behavior. Now, the reason why is not because it's bad for us. It's not that, meditation and journaling, and those are just the simple ones that I kind of say off the top of my head. It's not that those things are bad for us. It's that they are different. They challenge what has become the new norm. They challenge that chronic state of tension. They challenge your breathing patterns when you are breath holding, huffing, puffing, sighing all day, and I tell you to try a deep breathing exercise. It challenges what is familiar and predictable. What happens when that challenge comes? Your mind is going to pick up this back part that cares about survival. It is going to pick up on that challenge, that difference, and it is going to say, oh my gosh, this is different. It's not safe. What that does is it effectively puts you back into that stress response, that stress state. not because it's better for you, but because it was familiar. And that new familiar, not new, that is what is safe and predictable. And that's what your body wants. So when clients come to me and I am like, let's try some type of exercise or deep breathing, I will almost always say, your mind is going to get very active. It's going to say, this is a bunch of BS. This doesn't work. I was better off on my own. Chrissy really doesn't know what she's talking about. And the reason your mind does that is because it feels threatened by the new behavior you are trying to build. That's where distress tolerance comes in. Now, I am not here to say you need to feel miserable and uncomfortable. I am definitely not here to say you need to suffer when you do the work. I am saying you need to be aware of the sort of the biomechanics and the relationship here of what your mind is going to do when you are in the process of changing your behavior. So it is about slowly experiencing a little bit of that distress, a little bit of that threat around changing the behavior with the tension, with all of those things that are unique to you in your stress response. And it is about slowly letting your brain and your body experience the change. This doesn't happen overnight. The analogy that I give clients pretty much in every single session when we are working on just our basic understanding is, what happens when you walk the same path in grass? You walk it enough, the grass gets worn down, right? That makes sense. That's pretty logical. You walk that path, the grass gets worn down, and then the dirt gets worn down, and it becomes a rut or a walking path. And you don't even have to think about where to walk. You get up and you just walk the path. That is pretty much what I am explaining here and what happens in the body. Initially, things are survival skills and they turn into that rut and they become habitual. Learning to walk a new path feels like an inconvenience. Your brain is going to notice this is new and it's different. That's why your brain gets negative and starts making judgments, because it just wants what is familiar and predictable. It wants the safety that it knows. It doesn't want the improvement of the behavior change you are offering. So if you are new to counseling, if you are a new counselor, any of those things, I hope this information was helpful to you, that I presented it in a way that you have little tidbits that you can share with clients, friends, or family, or that you can just benefit from on your own. I am Chrissy, the emotional intelligence nurse, and I am here to help blend biology and psychology and give you that sort of oomph of encouragement that this is not as scary or as woo-woo as you may think it is, and there are some real great benefits here. I will catch you again on the next one. Don't forget to like, share, hit subscribe, all those good things so that we can keep this information going around and helping as many people as possible.